In any major city, a museum is a wonderful place, a pantheon of learning and discovery. In any major motion picture, a museum is a cesspool of violence and horrors come to life, a mecca of death and dismemberment. Maybe think twice when that field trip permission slip comes home. Luckily, you don't have to think twice about the Relic, because it's not that bad. Welcome one and all to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies. Now, I have waxed philosophic on multiple episodes about my love for Clive Cussler's writing and how I actually enjoy the Sahara movie, even though Clive Cussler himself didn't. Now we're going to get into another couple of authors whose books that I have read and really enjoyed, and the movie that is based off them. That's because we are talking about 1997's The Relic. And here to join for the first time on It's Not That Bad, it's Peter from the Movie Duel podcast. Peter, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you?
I am great. I'm not going to lie. When I saw the list of movies that you were pitching, there may have been a squeal when I saw The Relic in here, just because I was so stoked for it. But tell me, what is it about this film that made you want to pitch it?
It sort of fell into my lap at a certain age. So I was around about 14 in 1997. And this... In the UK, we just started to get something called Sky Box Office, which was where you were able to rent films from direct through your sort of Sky Box. So this was just like heaven to me. You know, we didn't have to rely on my parents for a visit to the video shop or anything like that. We could just rent films from home, and it was great, and you could record them onto VHS. So this, along with films like Anaconda and Scream, all sort of came into my lap at the same time, and this was just it for me. I'm a lover of monster movies, and yeah, this was just heaven to me.
There was something about that, mid to late 90s, monster horror movie genre that, kind of was all the rage at that time. And this one, I do believe, stood out amongst many of them. But before we go down this road, before we go down Relic Road, it is time to take this movie adaptation of a Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child book and trailerize it.
In 1995, Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child introduced the world to Agent Aloysius Pendergast in the hit novel Relic. In 1997, one movie will take that source material, add a "the" to the title, and subtract almost everything else in The Relic. Tom Sizemore is Lieutenant Vincent DaGosta, a cop who had to keep reminding people what his name is because he's not Agent Pendergast. He'll bark about losing his dog and chastise anyone who isn't superstitious as he tries to solve a murder at a museum with a superstition exhibit. There, he'll meet Dr. Margot Green, a woman smart enough to figure everything out, but not smart enough to get out of the murder museum and run far away. Together, they'll dive headfirst into a case filled with headless corpses in a movie that would have been good on its own with it decapitating the soul of the source material. It's The Relic, rated R, for read the damn book.
I do have to point out, this movie is part of, and actually is the first, Agent Aloysius Pendergast novel, of which there's about 20 of them, and Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child are still writing Pendergast books to this day. Pendergast ain't in this movie. He's in the book. He ain't in this movie. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about that one. But let's get into who is in this film. The movie stars Penelope Ann Miller, Tom Sizemore, Linda Hunt, James Whitmore, Clayton Rohner, Chi Moy Lo, and I apologize if I messed up that name. I got Aloysius right. You get one right name per episode. And Louis Van Bergen. However, there is an almost starring in this one. As Vincent DaGosta, apparently the first choice for this role was Harrison Ford. And I don't hate that idea.
I don't know. I think Ford's a little bit too crotchety. I think there's a bit more sort of niceness to the Costa character. And I think he would have been a bit too grumpy.
The thing is, I can see why they were considering Harrison Ford, because in the book, Pendergast is the one who's all suave from the FBI. And DaGosta is a little bit on the grumpier side, so I can see why they would pick Harrison Ford.
Okay.
But also, as Dr. Frock, as played by James Whitmore, he's the scientist in the wheelchair. Under consideration were Alec Baldwin, Al Pacino, Christopher Lloyd, and Robert De Niro. And I'm looking at that list.
Yeah.
And only one I could actually see, and it's Christopher Lloyd.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Pacino, De Niro, sure, maybe. Alec Baldwin, not in 1997.
No.
Christopher Lloyd, yes, definitely. The film was directed by Peter Hyams, who previous to this made 2010, The Year We Made Contact, Running Scared, and The Presidio, so a group of decent films. But he also directed Stay Tuned, and I have to point out that we've already done an episode on Stay Tuned, so that tells you how well that movie went. However, the film actually did pretty good. There are 0 Razzie nominations and 0 Stinker's Bad Movie Award nominations. However, at the Blockbuster Entertainment Awards, Tom Sizemore was nominated for Favorite Actor in a Horror Film. He lost to David Arquette in Scream 2. At the Saturn Awards, yeah, I can't really see anyone losing to David Arquette in anything.
No.
Not even in a WCW ring. But, you know. At the Saturn Awards,
Indeed,
you have Penelope Ann Miller, who was nominated for Best Actress. She lost to Neve Campbell in Scream, and the film was nominated for Best Horror Film. It lost to Scream. And at the Fantasporto Awards, it was nominated for Best Film. It lost to Bound. And Bound is a great movie. Don't get me wrong. I just don't see it in the same category as The Relic.
no, definitely not. I mean, as much as 14-year-old me would have loved Bound, probably at that time, I hadn't seen it by then, but The Relic is an infinitely better film than Bound. Definitely.
I'd be curious, if you take a look at, because there are some way out there films in that category. Of course, it's the Fantasporto Awards, so you're probably talking a very diverse range of films that are qualifying. But Bound is great for what it is. Relic is great for what it is, but they're two different things.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I suppose you can put that to most award ceremonies and categories within those ceremonies, can't you? Whether it's the Oscars and Best Picture, I don't know.
Anyway, I'm all for genre awards. Like, yes, put the horror films together. Yes, put the sci-fi films together. Because let's be honest, a sci-fi film is not going to, beat out a period piece depending on who's voting, or vice versa. Let them sit in the genre.
Yeah, that's true.
One place this movie didn't fare as well was at the box office. The film had a budget of $40 million and only made $33.9 million worldwide. It did debut at number 1 on the January 10th, 1997 weekend. January releases where movies go to die. But also, debuting that week were First Strike, which debuted at number 6 with $5.7 million, and Turbulence, which debuted at number 8 with $4.46 million. So it did fairly well. Like, the number 2 film was Evita with about 8.3, but that's in its third week. So, I mean, yeah, The Relic is much better than Evita. Personal opinion.
Yes, yeah. I'm not a big fan of musicals, so I would definitely put The Relic above Evita, especially musicals starring Madonna.
I'm getting the feeling, just from the way you said that you're probably going to be regretting the one day where you have to do a movie duel podcast on best or worst musicals, aren't you?
Well, there are a few. You know, my personal sort of preference is towards horror and probably sci-fi and adventure. So, you know, something like Rocky Horror would definitely, you know, fall into that category. So I've always got something in the back pocket for most subjects, I would imagine.
Oh, trust me. If it comes to that genre of musical, have I got a film for you? But we'll get to that eventually here. The critics, however, over at Metacritic, this film has a Metascore of 55, and over at Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score is 34. And the tomatometer is actually higher at 37%. So to you, are you surprised that normally you sit there and say, okay, the movie qualifies, so it's got to be somewhere in that range. But are you surprised the audience score is lower than the tomatometer?
I was, yeah, definitely. When I looked this up, and you know, obviously what the qualifying parameters were for films that sort of qualify for this podcast, it was a real shock. Because I know quite a few people who really enjoy this film. I think, you know, for me, I think it's maybe a little bit too intelligent for a monster movie, I suppose. That sort of style that was there in the mid-90s. It was maybe a little bit too highbrow of a concept, I suppose, for the audiences who maybe just wanted to switch off a little bit, which I think you still can with this film, but it was a massive shock, definitely.
I mean, there's probably some attribution to the idea that the movie is based on the first Agent Pendergast book, and Agent Pendergast is nowhere in this film. So I can see people going in waiting to see the character that they've read, and it's like, nope, I don't think so. You don't get him. That would be like, and I'm going to bring this up again, if you had Clive Cussler's book Sahara turned into the film with no Dirk Pitt. His entire book series is pretty much based on Dirk Pitt. You got to have Dirk Pitt in there. Same thing here. Yeah. You kind of have to have Agent Pendergast.
I suppose it's like making Kiss the Girls without Alex Cross as well, I suppose.
Right?
Yeah.
But let's get into the breakdown here. I'm going to start with you here, with Penelope Ann Miller, who played Dr. Margot Green. How was she for you?
I thought she was really good in this. I mean, she's not really... I can't think of anything, and looking at my research, there wasn't a hell of a lot of films that she's been the leading lady in. She's been, you know, a relatively sort of supporting actress up until this point from the films that I've seen anyway. But I think she pulls it off really well. You know, she portrays this sort of kept down evolutionary biologist who's struggling to get her grant. But at the same time, she's realistic. She's not a complete damsel in distress or anything like that. She can stand her ground, you know, up against this character of Greg Lee that's trying to sort of steal her grant. But for me, I think she holds it pretty well. You know, you believe that she's this biologist, and she knows what she's talking about, and she's not sort of taking any when it comes to you know, trying to get ahead, and she wants to just sort of crack on, even though there's been this murder and this body found at the museum. She just wants to get on, and she just wants to get on with the work and keep a team going and get this grant. And yeah, you know, I think she's totally believable in this role.
I mean, she took the role because she had never done horror to this point in her career, which is kind of cool. I mean, you take a look at some of the movies, you know, Awakenings, Kindergarten Cop, which she was great in, The Shadow, which no one was great in. You know, she was also in Big Top Pee-wee, which, come on, if you're going to be in a Pee Wee Herman movie, and it's not Pee-wee's Big Adventure, you got to do the next best thing here. But I think in this case, she nailed it. Now, when I was reading the book, or when I read any book, I don't know if you're the same way, I sit there and I try to mentally cast the role. So as I'm reading it, I'm picturing actors in that role. when I was reading the book, and no bullshit here on this one, I'm reading this and I'm like, you know who would be really great in this? Penelope Ann Miller. She would kill this role. And then the movie comes out and it's Penelope Ann Miller, and I basically stood up and said, I was right. Hollywood, hire me. I will cast your films. They didn't hire me, but still, I was right on Penelope Ann Miller. The thing that I really liked about this, you nailed it, right? She's no nonsense. She's nose down, like very smart, but it's not cliched in a way that she's bitchy to everybody else. She cares about her team. She cares about the museum. She's, she cares about the cop that she talked to, or said hi to every day until he goes into the bathroom, smokes a joint, and gets killed. Like, she's a compassionate person who's passionate about her science. She, smart people don't have to be bitches. She really killed this role. I'm really, really happy that they did put her in, and that Hollywood somehow listened to me, even though they never asked me.
I mean, I would, I think she's a very capable actress, and I think everything I've seen her in, she's always performed really well in it. And I would even go to bat and say that you need to cover The Shadow on this podcast as well.
Oh, are you calling your shot? Are we going down that road?
Yeah, definitely.
Done and done. Now, we get to Tom Sizemore, who played Lieutenant Vincent d'Agosta. I'm just going to put this out there right now, since I was reading the book, before this movie came out. My envisionment of d'Agosta was John Malkovich. Tom Sizemore is not John Malkovich. But how was Tom Sizemore as d'Agosta?
Again, I think in a similar way to Penelope Ann Miller, he's not somebody that you would immediately go to and think of a leading man. And I don't think he's necessarily had much of a chance of that. He's always played these sort of minor roles, and I think he did for the rest of his career. Obviously he suffered with a lot of demons down the line before his untimely passing last year. Or was it this year? Very recently. But it's just got such a nuance to the character. He's a bit of a wise ass, but he's not, unless people are a wise ass to him. He gives as good as he gets. And you've got these little traits to his character, his the thoughts about superstition and how that sort of ties in with the exhibition at the museum. And then you've got this sort of minor sort of subplot that he's going through a divorce and he's lost his dog, which is, it seems to be the sort of love of his life, and this affinity for dogs, which carries on through the rest of the film, which he handles really well as an actor. And I think Tom Sizemore is a fascinatingly capable actor. And I don't think he's ever had the opportunity to really show that in a leading role, other than this film that sort of comes to mind. And again, whether that's been held back by his demons, I don't know. But I just think, again, like Penelope Ann Miller, he's very believable in this role, and you just like him as a character, which is the ultimate thing that you want from a leading man, especially in this kind of film. And yeah, I just think he's really strong in this film.
The interesting thing is that they cast someone who wasn't really, top billing lead man stature at that point. That would have been a Harrison Ford casting for sure. But I think the interesting thing about casting, for lack of a better term, character actors, ensemble actors, actors who you put them in the role and that role's going to be solid, but you're not leaning on their name to sell the tickets. Really, the Kathoga is the selling point, the horror is the selling point, and I think the connection to the book is a selling point as well. Mm-hmm. I think that if you put someone like a Harrison Ford in there, knowing that the changes that they made to make Dr. Green, the hero really in this, as opposed to d'Agosta, it's not that cliche cop saves the day thing. Dr. Green does it, which is actually different than the book. It's Pendergast who actually kills the monster in the book. And here, and this is where fans of the book are probably going to sit there and go, yeah, hashtag not my Dagasta, because in the movie, he's very superstitious, and it's like he's got his lucky bullet, and he's constantly saying, don't step over the dead body. And in the book, Dagasta is like, yeah, take your superstitions and shove them up your ass. That's basically, it's the exact opposite, right? They took Pendergast and Dagasta from the book and basically mashed them into the one character, which I agree with in a sense, because, if you've got a New York cop and an FBI agent both trying to solve this case, it's going to come like head to head, and it's going to take away from the fact that they set up Penelope Ann Miller as a very good female protagonist. And this is where this movie shines, and probably is ahead of its time.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you say, he doesn't sort of save the day. He's there to sort of get things moving in the right direction. And, the main sort of plot points and the getting on top of things, it's not really down to him. It's down to the Margot Green character. She figures everything out. She ultimately, it destroys the monster in this very epic, although kind of dodgy CGI finale. But yeah, they both work their roles really well, and they keep the story moving along. But ultimately, it's down to Margot.
And that's the thing. Like, yes, we can sit here and poke at the CGI of everything, and then remind ourselves that it's 1997 and it's only a $40 million budget. So, put that aside. In the book, it's Pendergast, snipes the creature right between the eye based on Dr. Green's understanding of the physiology of the creature. Here, it's the perfect way for a scientist to destroy a creature by using chemical reactions, as her choice. Like, very, very, like, despite the fact that it's different from the book, it's very smart.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Linda Hunt, who played Dr. Ann Cuthbert. It's kind of like the museum curator, and feels like the inspiration for Edna Mode from The Incredibles here. How was she for you?
She's a very dependable actor, I think, Linda Hunt. Whether it's something like this or Kindergarten Cop, which she's obviously familiar with Penelope Ann Miller from that film. She adds a bit of character. She doesn't just have an interesting look. I think, again, it comes down to that believability. In a film that's about, at the end of the day, it's about a giant monster that's going through a museum killing people. She adds that believability to her character, that she's concerned about the future of the museum, and this obviously a very important exhibit for them to keep things going, and she's concerned about her staff and everything else, and she's just a solid character for this film, definitely.
I just want to put an image in your head, since given the three actors that we have talked about here so far. Okay, I just want to put an image in your head, and the next time you watch The Relic, you will never get this image out of your head. So bear with me here. Tom Sizemore is Mr. Incredible. Penelope Ann Miller is Elastigirl. And Linda Hunt is Edna Mode. You literally have a live action Incredibles in The Relic. Because he kind of looks like him.
Yeah, definitely. I can see where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah. Now go back and watch it, and all you need is Samuel L. Jackson going, "Where's my super suit?" I can't believe we went Pixar with The Relic, but that's okay. The thing with Linda Hunt, aside from being, not necessarily a stern, but definitely a dedicated museum curator, is that, again, they're not playing these characters for bitchy one-note characters. She's firm in trying to get the museum and this exhibit going so they can get some funding. But she also fosters healthy competition, as seen by, yeah, sure, Dr. Greg is applying for this. You're applying for it too. I want to see you get it, but I'm not stopping him. Like, it's a very interesting dynamic in how it's it's almost like controlled chaos that she likes to see in her staff. And, you're really not quite sure if she's, a good character or a bad character, but it makes her a deep character. And I think Linda Hunt played that perfectly in this.
Well, that's it. There's even a moment in it where she's at the start of the exhibit. She's concerned, or she's starting to look concerned because Margot's not there, and she doesn't know where she is. And she was looking at her watch, and then she spots the Blaisdells that we've heard mention of. This rich couple that obviously give the grants and everything else. And then she's distracted by that and completely forgets about Margot. So yeah, she's not a one-dimensional character. She's not just looking out for Margot. She's concerned. She's thinking about the money and the money people that are coming to this gala opening as well.
Exactly. There are some one-dimensional characters here, and we'll get to them in a little bit, but Linda Hunt is definitely not one of them. I love when you have a solid character that solidifies the relationship with the staff and with the situation without having to overplay their hand. A perfect choice. But one-dimensional characters here. Chi Moilo as Dr. Greg Lee. I'm just going to ask, did you cheer when he bought it?
Yes, pretty much. I think he serves his purpose completely. He's believable as this sort of arsehole character who will do absolutely everything and anything to get what he wants, and not, it's well established in the film that he's already got his grant. He's got enough money to keep himself going, but he doesn't mind swiping another grant from underneath Margot to better himself and put her team out of work. So yeah, and he just doesn't care about other people at all. So yeah, I cheered absolutely.
Shamelessly, annoyingly super eager and super ambitious, and breaks one of the cardinal rules of horror movies. If you're dickish to the final girl, you're gonna die.
Absolutely.
There are rules. I mean, you look at the security cop, the first one to really die in the museum. He went, smoked drugs, you die, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure if anyone had sex in the museum, they would have died, right? You have someone being mean to the final girl, he gonna die, right? Those are the horror movie rules. Robert Englund actually does a great dissertation on them. If you have the DVD of Freddy versus Jason, just listen to the director's commentary. Trust me, Robert Englund is having the time of his life on the director's commentary on that one. It's one of those things where it's almost like they're painting, the annoying character with a very broad brushstroke. Right? Like, this is very much like you don't like him right away. You don't like him throughout the movie. There is zero redemption for him whatsoever. And you're happy when the Cathoga gets him. But to the same token as well, Chi Moilo probably looked at the script and said, yeah, he's going to die and you're going to be happy when he's gone. So I'm going to play that to its fullest hilt. Which means he understood the assignment.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can get people, it's like, I'm a big fan of professional wrestling, and it's the same thing in that is that, the bad guys have to make you hate them. The same applies to this kind of character. They're meant to be there to be hated, and actors have to make you hate them. The same with what's his name? The character of Joffrey in Game of Thrones. Everybody absolutely hated him, or the character of Ramsay Bolton as well. They're there to be absolutely hated and for you to relish in their demise and not really have too much of a moral standpoint about the fact that they are meeting their demise. And for me, this character, the Greg Lee character, does completely achieve that. Definitely.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love that you brought up the wrestling thing. Like, heel pops are a real thing, right? If you're a heel and you get the crowd booing you the minute you walk into the ring, you have done your job. And the best wrestlers know, when you're the heel, if you can do that, you're main carding, guaranteed. I think Chimuelo really did a good job in making us dislike this character.
Oh, he's the, if we're going to go down the lane of professional wrestling comparisons, he's the Miz of this film, most definitely.
Oh God. You know what? I'm going to take it back a few years though. I don't know if I'd say the Miz, but I think I would definitely say the Honky Tonk Man.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Yeah, yeah.
Like, definitely, and I'm talking about Dr. Greg Lee. I'm not talking about Chimuelo here, but like annoying, and the minute he gets his comeuppance, you're like, yep, absolutely, that's that moment. James Whitmore is Dr. Albert Frock, and we saw the list, or we went through the list of potentials that could have been him. I'm really glad it was James Whitmore, but what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, James Whitmore, to anybody who watched a lot of films in the 90s or grew up through the 90s and watched a lot of cinema, he stands out as Brooks in Shawshank Redemption. So he's almost like this sort of warm blanket of just this homely character, even though he maybe did despicable things to put him in prison. We never learned that in that film, but he's just such a homely character in that film. And he sort of carries that on here, but with this sort of cool grandpa kind of character. He has these sort of familiar nods to the Margot Green character. He's winking and he's not there. He's all about the science. He's not about the money. He's not fussed about the end game of those sort of things. He's looking out for Margot, and he's like a sort of a kid with a Lego set. He's just fascinated by everything, and he's a key part to the story. This whole theory that runs through the film, this Callisto effect, is his, or is something that he buys into. So he's an important part of the story development, and he's also a part of the heart of the film, because he becomes, a major sort of sacrificial lamb in the film as well.
I mentioned that I'm happy it's him. I think if you put someone in the chair like, De Niro or Pacino or Christopher Lloyd, like, it becomes a bigger role merely based on the presence of an actor of that stature, especially in 1997. Here, he's capable to blend into the background when need to, act as Dr. Green's mentor and support network. And, yes, his theory is kind of like an expositional dump at that point as he's describing the theory, which is fine. It's not overblown. It's not one of those, hey, let's go to the library and look up all this stuff on this one thing just so we understand what the hell's going on. It's kind of sprinkled throughout, and smartly so. And this is one of those films where you go back and you watch it after you've watched it the first time, and you see little bits in the movie that kind of like, at first you weren't, it was just a scene, but then when you go back and watch it, it kind of like, oh, this is where they were telegraphing things. So when Dr. Frock is in the cage hiding from the Cathoga finds him and stares at him first before killing him. By the way, spoilers like a mofo. Okay. We're over 90 episodes into this podcast. Like, it might as well just be on the artwork at this point. If you've listened this long, you've given up all hope of avoiding spoilers. Sorry, not sorry. But it's one of those things where, his death is almost, it's bittersweet, right? Because in that moment, he realizes he's at an end, but it comes with the realization that his theory was right. So it's one of those, his life's work both came to fruition and proved to be his downfall at the same time. And there was just something so sweet about that death. And I'm glad they didn't play it for the violence of the other deaths that you saw. You don't need to see that. Just cut away. And then, when they stumble upon his body again, don't show the body, just show the reaction. I'm going to give, Peter Hyams full respect. There is some smart directing going on here, smart casting, but it's the lingering look from the Cathoga where you could almost, once you realize, that there's probably some realization in it. And
Absolutely,
it makes so much sense.
Definitely. I mean, you don't really find in this kind of movie, this sort of out and out sort of monster movie, that you'll find many scenes that that sort of tug at your heartstrings a little bit, but it does in this because you've built that character up really well. You've got a very capable actor in James Whitmore, and he's got the chemistry with the rest of the cast as well. So it does become a moment where you're like, no, but ultimately it's there to serve purpose for the rest of the film, and it does that absolutely.
One of the things I need to bring up before we get on to some of the other actors here, and there's not that many left, but when the Cathoga goes face to face with Margot at the end, and again holds the stare, we recognize now who the Cathoga is, and it's the stare down kind of thing, and then it licks her. This is where I have to sit there and say, when at any point have we established that? And again, if you haven't watched it, take the earphones out. That John Whitney had any sort of feelings towards Margot Green. Like, did I miss something there?
No, absolutely not. I don't think that's sort of established through the story at all. But I think that probably comes from the fact that Stan Winston could do a really convincing, icky-looking tongue that could lick an actress, basically.
Okay, I just needed to double check because I'm like, now that that's Whitmore, it's like, did I miss some info dump there where she was happy that he's not back because he was lecherous or whatever? No, I didn't miss a thing. I don't know, maybe it's in a longer cut. I don't know. But since we're talking about John Whitney, as played by Louis Van Bergen, obviously we're really only talking about him in the beginning of the film, kind of like the tease of the film. I have thoughts, but I want to hear yours on this one.
I think for what it is, for this sort of prologue to the film, it's enough. I mean, he doesn't have to do anything other than really act sort of spaced out and like he's tripping, and look a bit sort of disgruntled at the quayside, where the ship's taking his sort of cocaine leaves, I suppose is the best way to put it. He's not got a lot there. I think you could have. There's probably pros for it to be a little bit more sort of fleshed out and maybe a bit more of a competent actor. He's not an actor I'm familiar with, certainly. And I think it could probably have meant a little bit more. But I think you don't have any development other than that. If you had development more, you get a bit of an inkling that this creature is developing to a certain point, and the evolution of this creature. Obviously, you take in the fact that he's got to get through a bathroom door to get the first victim at the museum. So you wouldn't necessarily think that it's as big as it becomes in the next few days. So you could have maybe had, if you'd had that development of this creature evolving from the John Whitney character, then you wouldn't necessarily have the story that we have, and you wouldn't have the suspense that we have. So I think it's a suitable performance for the actor that's in that role.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me. In comparison to everyone else in this movie, he seems to be the one character that might be a little overacting. Like, I'm not going to say like Richard E. Grant and Hudson Hawk level overacting here, but maybe a more apt comparison. And I'm going to drop my Doctor Who geekery here for a second. Prior to the 50th anniversary special of Doctor Who that had not just David Tennant and Matt Smith, but also William Hurt as the War Doctor. Sorry, John Hurt as the War Doctor. There was like a little interstitial, like a short that happened to show Paul McGann basically regenerating into the War Doctor.
The Night of the Doctor, I think it was called.
Yeah. But the thing is, Paul McGann was so over the top. And, like, I love my Doctor Who, don't get me wrong. But I'm watching this and I'm just like, whoa, turn it down. You got it set to 14. That's 4 more than 10.
See, I love it. I love that. I love Paul McGann as a Doctor. I'm bitterly disappointed that they haven't tried to sort of shoehorn him in a little bit more since his tenure. His very short tenure as Doctor Who was what? God, nearly 30 years ago now.
1996, as I recall.
1996, yeah.
That one-off special on Fox.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like that aspect of his character, and he's Paul McGann's very good. He's very good at overacting. I think if you look at the assembly cut, I think it's called, of Alien 3, where his character's a little bit more fleshed out. The character of Golek, it's just so much better than what's in the original cut, and I like that. Just as going off topic of of the Relic and talking about Doctor Who, but Paul McGann, I'd bat for. I completely disagree. I think he was a brilliant Doctor Who, even though it was very short and sweet.
That being said, I could see Paul McGann in this role. And I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it's the Whovian in me. I might appreciate the role more a little bit here. 2 more smaller roles to get into here. The first one is Clayton Rohner, who played Detective Hollingsworth, who was DaCosta's partner. It's a smaller role, but how was that?
Again, I think it's really good. Again, it's very realistic. I think he's got that chemistry with Tom Sizemore. You get the feeling that they've worked together and they work well together. There's no sort of combativeness to their relationship. They just work really well together. And he steps up when he needs to. He becomes he's the sort of leader of the subplot of these people getting out of the museum through the underground tunnels. And yeah, I think he's really suitable in this role. Again, he's not an actor I'm overly familiar with. I couldn't see a lot that I'd seen him in from his filmography. But yeah, I think he's really suitable for the role.
I will say this film does feel more like an ensemble as opposed to a starring vehicle, really, for anyone. And the nice thing is everyone, well, almost everyone, but everyone in this film is competently casted. Like, all the way through, you've got smart directing, your jump scares make sense. The Cathoga design when it's in real life looks great. I will agree with you that the Cathoga on Fire is A, great band name, but B, it's it leaves a little bit to be desired. But if the thing I'm complaining about is CGI, then we've got a decent film here. Lastly, I need to bring this character up here. Dr. Zwizik, the coroner, as played by Audra Lindley.
Yes.
I have thoughts. I want to hear this.
I think this is one of the most understated. Well, it's not understated because of her performance, but it's just a fantastic character. You've got. I can't think of the actress's name, but she's just so extravagantly sort of sassy. This coroner, and she's delighted in her work. There's one line that was it 7 decapitations in a week, and I hate somebody who takes head and doesn't give it. It's just a classic line. And then he asked about what the murder weapon may have been, and she delights in telling him that it was something big. She just loves what she's doing, and she's got this obviously familiar sort of relationship with the Lieutenant D'Agosta, and you can see it there in a very short scene. You get that, you get that they've got this relationship, and that she's this particular character, and this sort of sassiness to her. It's just incredible for this short scene. It's just a very, very minor character, but just performed brilliantly, and you don't even see her face.
I mean, this was her last film. She actually died later that in the same year that this movie was out. So this was her final performance. And at one point, she was actually married to James Whitmore, who was in this film. They just never were on set at the same time. Every now and then, in a certain year, in a calendar year, you get 2 movies that have something completely and eerily similar to each other, and because it takes so long to make a film, that it's got to be completely by accident. But what was it about 1997 that had funny, definitely horny, definitely thirsty coroners dealing with something crazy? Because in 1997 you had this with Audra Lindley. You also had Men in Black, which had Linda Fiorentino as the quirky, funny, definitely thirsty, and a little bit freaky coroner there. 1997 was weird, y'all.
Definitely, yeah.
But it was. It's so much fun. And the nice thing is, it's that breath of fresh air. Mm-hmm. You've got a very tense horror movie. Mm-hmm. You need those moments of levity. Not in the middle of the half hour of trying to escape the creature, but, in the build up to it, you need those moments. And I think Audrey Lindley killed this one here. Overall, though, like in the pantheon of those 90s era horror monster based movies, how does this rank for you?
Oh, I think it's up there. I think it's around the same time, and I know it's a film that you've already covered on this podcast. Things like Anaconda that are nowhere near as intelligent as this film, and I think that's what separates it from everything else. Is it's got that intelligence. You look at those critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and they're either that this film is brainless or that it's very intelligent. Maybe not so much the latter, but I think there is that thing of it's maybe a little bit too intelligent for this kind of film. People expecting a monster film, but not having to think about the science of it, even though the science is very good and it's very believable. It doesn't really sort of sit in the middle, I suppose. But I think it's different to anything else that you saw in the 90s. Another, not necessarily a monster film, but things like The Ghost and the Darkness that were another very good contender for this podcast. They were more grounded in nature, a bit like Anaconda, which was big monsters, natural things. This was sort of fantastical, but it was grounded in science, grounded in nature, and maybe not what people were expecting at that time, I suppose.
Yeah, I think if you're going into this film, I'm just going to put this out there. Don't read the book. The book is, you can see where the source material is coming from, but go into this film forgetting that the book exists, because to me, this film would have done better if it was not The Relic. If it was some other type of horror film that you could sit there and say, well, it's similar to that, but it's still its own thing. If you never read a Pendergast novel, you're really, really going to love this book or this movie. If you've watched the movie, you're still going to like the book. It's not one or the other. But yeah, I think the critics are way too hard on this one, and it's so much better than Anaconda.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Peter, it has come time. So let us know, who is your MVP of The Relic?
See, it's a tough one. I think it's Tom Sizemore for me. He's so likable as a character. Not to say that Penelope Ann Miller and Margot Green are not likable as a character. I think Tom Sizemore, he hits all those beats of being quite comedic, being really strong, and being just driving the story forward. He's more the logical sort of anchor to the film, so he's there to sort of take us along, not maybe being scientific and everything else, and understanding things from a base sort of standpoint. So I think, and for somebody who doesn't normally get the leading roles, I think he really nails it in this film.
He was under consideration for me, but maybe I'm still raw because they didn't cast John Malkovich like I pictured it. And I was also considering Peter Hyams, the director, because this movie is, it's very, very atmospherically well done. It's not bright like a movie like Anaconda was. It really was. It felt very two-dimensional and set in stage. This felt dark and eerie and creepy and smartly directed, but I can't not give it to Penelope Ann Miller. This is the film that really took her career for me and put a very bright star on it. I love everything she did in it. I loved how she played it smartly, and I wish that more movies would have looked at her and said, she is complete action leading star worthy. Just give her the opportunity. I thought Penelope Ann Miller was great in this. Peter, thank you so much for getting me to rewatch this film and to rethink about the books there. Before we go, please let us know about the Movie Duel podcast, where we can find it and where we can hear it.
Okay, so at the Movie Duel podcast, we pick a subject that's based around movies. So that can be best, worst, underrated, overrated, scariest, all sorts of different subjects, and we pick a film based on that subject. So between myself and one of my co-hosts, so I have a team of various different co-hosts, my core four, as I call them, and then we sort of pit those films against each other. So you can find us on Facebook at Movie Duel Podcast, and you can find us on Twitter at Movie Duel Pod, and you can email us if you want to get in touch at movieduelpodcast@gmail.com.
And I can safely say, having listened to a few of the episodes, if you got a long commute, it is an absolutely great podcast to listen to. Peter, you are more than welcome back here anytime you wish. I'm going to go take a look at that list and go, all right, let's do this one here. And, as I'm editing this, going, oh, yeah, there was that movie too. And that, yeah, no, you're coming back.
Well, I think I've added at least two more to this to that list just during the time of this conversation. So
we'll get the residency started real soon there, Peter. Thank you so much. And to you, our listeners, thank you so much. Now, you guys know the drill. If there's a movie out there that you think is unfairly maligned or is so bad that there's no way in heck that we can find anything good to say about it, hit us up on any social media platform. I don't even know if I can call it Twitter anymore. Hit us up on social media at Not That Badcast, or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, check out our Coming Soon page, where you can see some of the movies that we are planning for future episodes. Peter, thank you so much. Listeners, you guys are awesome. This is It's Not That Bad. Take care.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.